Hello, one redneck to another. I just want to ask you all folks about this global warming nonsense that's been raging for the last, basically my entire life, which is almost 60 years. See, folks, I've been around a long time, and the trouble is with the global warming is now they call it climate change. Originally, it was global cooling. Back in the 70s, look it up if you don't believe me. All the rage was global cooling, and everything was going to freeze, and it was because of what we were doing with CFCs in the upper atmosphere. Americans specifically were using chlorofluorocarbons that were destroying the ozone layer, a big hole in the ozone layer. Well, they had scientists and government funded studies to go out and to experiment and to look for findings that would support conclusions for further studies funded all by government. There was a whole entire industry, folks, that was created to address global cooling. The ice age was coming. Well, guess what? The trouble with that is back in the 70s is it didn't fit the actual climate data. So along comes Al Gore, took a course once in college and perverted the whole scientific course. Check it out. Talked to his professor. Al Gore was undistinguished in his course, didn't even get a great grade, took one tiny little aspect of a theory and ran with it, wrote a book. Earth in the Balance was one of them. Failed to become president as Bill Clinton's vice president. Matter of fact, he was the person least known in the country at the time and did the least. He sat through the whole horrible days of the Clinton administration, didn't really say much of anything. He was nowhere to be found. And then he came out with this silly movie, Inconvenient Truth, which I did painfully watch. And it was absolutely, check it out, absolutely hard to watch. It was painful to watch, especially his comments about how he was just devastated to have lost the presidential election in 2000 to George W. Bush. So anyway, he comes up with this movie, talks about how global warming is going to melt the polar caps and flood everybody. And he had computer simulations, and he basically said everything had been concluded. There were basically 98% of scientists, climatologists, surveyed, agreed that man-made global warming was going to be the next terror. Okay, well, guess what? 15 years since his silly movie came out, we have had quite a normal warming period. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing extraordinary. And they've had the Kyoto, and they've had all the climate agreements, and Obama's administration here in 2015, 2016 had just signed on to these limitations that are going to save the planet. Basically, the bottom line for you folks that don't know is the West, that is us, are going to be severely penalized for our superior capitalist model, at least until Obama showed up. And basically, we're going to be penalized for the amount of pollution that we put out, and they're measuring it. Well, how do you do that? Well, nobody knows, but never stopped them. And so that is the problem, is they haven't had the climate data to show it. So instead of global warming, they moved on to global climate change. So now any low, any high is all our fault. Well, let me tell you, folks, their whole push is really, if you can boil it right down to it, it is actually a push for global government, because we all know that individual countries are too stupid, and the people are too stupid and too short-sighted to see that we cannot possibly manage ourselves. We need some global authority with the liberals in charge, somebody like, Obama, who's leaving office. Here it is, December 19th. He's leaving office. It's electoral day, as a matter of fact. And Mr. Donald J. Trump is going to be elected by the electors today, and that just burns their asses. But that's another story. That's another tape. So basically, they are moving forward to try to keep this global climate change a big issue. And what trouble is, Donald J. Trump's coming in, and he knows, like most of us know, it's a big hoax, big power grab for big government, big world government. And so anyhow, it is really kind of comical to see. As I sit here in my truck right now, I'm looking at Walla Walla, Washington, and it is covered with snow, unprecedented snow they haven't seen in over 20 years. We have a couple of feet of snow. We have more on the way. It's a disaster out here. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention that it is quite the sight to see these people talk about global climate change as though it's real. There ain't no global warming happening in Walla Walla right now. Goodbye.